Is this live? Hello? Yes. Okay. Still a surprise when it actually works, which is, I think telling as to my technical proficiency, but it did work. Oh, and I've just punched the fucking microphone wire, so hopefully that hasn't fucked things up. Who knows? Who cares? Anyway, it's 1:30 in the morning. I am bored, so it's time to shout at Dave Rubin. And that's the beautiful thing about Dave Rubin. And it's realistically the only good thing about Dave Rubin, is that regardless of the situation, regardless of the time of day, what mood you're in, any context surrounding it, there's never a bad time to shout at Dave Rubin, ever, in any scenario. He is a profoundly corrupt human being on every moral level. He's a disgusting liar, bullshitter, paid shill for multi-billionaires. He's awful. And the thing is, not only is he a liar, he's not a good one. And we're about to see a prime example, a perfect piece of Rubin-esque. Oh, that's shitting all over Rubens, the great classic artist. Anyway, Rubin-esque rather than Ruben-esque nonsense from Dave. As the title of this will clue you in, Dave Rubin does not understand 1984. Now, I'm not talking about the year 1984, because that would be ridiculous. Why would I be stunning the year 1984? 3 years before I was born, who gives a fuck? We all know history only started with my birth in 1987, obviously. I'm talking, of course, about the superb dystopian novel by the great George Orwell. Now, for those who followed me on YouTube, you will know I've done a series with a guy called Henk-Jan Vinke, who's a fantastic Dutchman, about trying to recall reclaiming Orwell, where we attempt to reclaim Orwell. Because a lot of right-wing dickheads think that those books were written for them or from their point of view, and obviously not. George Orwell was one of the great writers of the 20th century and a great socialist. Now, when I say a great socialist, I don't necessarily mean perfect. I'm sure there'll be people either in the comments or in the stream chat or whatever who will tell me, about the racism and homophobia, which, yeah, he wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Although, in full context, it is, I think, worth pointing out that most people of that time were even more racist and even more homophobic. So, by all means, criticise him if you wish, but note that he's a superb writer and literally went to Spain, put his life on the line for socialism. That's something of worth, something of note. So, Dave Rubin, though, is one of these right-wing twats who think that 1984, the novel, again, not the year, is writing from their perspective rather than literally the opposite of that. And we're about to see a prime example of that in a second. Now, just to set this up, there are, as many people will know, two things I love in this world: Dave Rubin and Prager University. Where's the camera? University. I put my hand went out of the screen. I'm really good at this. Anyway, Dave Rubin and Prager University, and they've teamed up, sort of. Anyway, they do a thing called called the Book Club, very originally titled, where they go through novels. Well, not just novels, because they went through. I saw the one, Michael Knowles, who's this fucking right-wing twat. You'll see him. He's the host of the show. I saw the one they did about the Federalist Papers, the great one of the great founding documents of the American nation by the founding fathers, Madison and Jefferson, with Ben Shapiro, because that's the shtick. They always have like a random sort of right-wing guest, one of those PragerU approved people, as the guest. And so they had Dave Rubin on for their show on 1984 recently, and someone sent me this, and it was just too silly not to rip apart. In the spirit of reclaiming Orwell, which hopefully will be coming back at some point on my YouTube channel. The next book we've been planning. Me and Henk have been planning to do this for ages. But he's been moving. He started a new job and stuff, so it's been put off for months. Anyway, And the next book we'll be doing is The Road to Wigan Pier, which is another classic, a much more serious. Well, they're all serious, but you know, a much more real life rather than a novella or whatever. Anyway, enough of that nonsense. Let's take a look at Dave Rubin. Let's do a scene transition. Boom! Look at that. I am a genius. I think we can all agree. Yes, so as you can see here, The Book Club, 1984 by George Orwell, with Dave Rubin. Yes. Now, just to answer you in the chat, yeah, I don't need to sleep. I do night shifts, so this is like the middle of my day, basically. Need to get me a new camera. You can if you want to. I mean, I've got a camera, I just can't be bothered to put it into this because I'm at some point going to take this computer into my proper room for this, and then hopefully set up a camera there. Anyway, doesn't matter. Let's dunk on Dave Rubin talking shit about 1984. This, to say that these two idiots get things wrong and have a rather, at best, trite analysis of 1984 is an understatement. Let me know about if the audio's too loud.
Welcome
or too
back
quiet
to the
whatever.
Book Club. I'm Michael Knowles. The book this month, very timely, 1984 by George Orwell. But first,
Is it very timely? I'm not sure it is. How was the audio there, everybody? Are we good? Audio is sound. Awesome. Well, that is literally true. Audio is sound, yes. That is literally true. One second, okay. Yes.
in our fast-paced world, it is tough to make reading a priority. We all know that. Well, at least it used to be. But at thinker.org, they are live in a matter of sellers.
No
You want to
adverts.
expand, go to Thinker to start to help me understand the world we're living in, a mind in motion. Here to help me understand the world we're living in, 1984 by George Orwell, the great Dave Rubin. Dave, thank you for being here.
Knowles, it's good to be with
The great Dave Rubin. Not only do they not understand the book, but clearly they don't understand words. Now, I assume that both of these gentlemen have English as a first language, and yet words do seem to escape them quite regularly. Anyway.
you. I mean, that is not a joke, what you just started there. This is the world we are living in.
I want
No, it literally isn't. Like, there are elements of fascistic bullshit going down at the moment, mainly brought into focus by people that you two dickheads support. But anyway, it's not literally this world. This world has government mandated control of like everything, which doesn't exist now. Like the fact that you two dickheads can jump on the internet and talk shit is a perfect sign of the fact that the government isn't controlling absolutely everything. The government is not able to just like there aren't telescreens on the wall. There isn't literally a big brother watching you. There's a lot of surveillance bullshit. It's not cool. I'm not suggesting it's perfect, but the idea that the horrific dystopian fascistic future that is foreseen in 1984 is literally the world we're now living in is put paid to the lie that I am able to criticise you criticising other people on the internet, and none of the three of us, the Knowles, Rubin or Logan, get arrested for it or get sent to a re-education camp or whatever. So it's not a joke what he said to open up, and it's not a joke that you just said that, but it is farcical to the point where it should be a joke, but you do genuinely mean it, and you're an idiot.
you to
I was
tell me.
thinking of calling you Winston, and you can call me Winston throughout this. We should just call each other Winston.
For those who don't know, Winston is the name of the main character, who's like the hero protagonist, at least initially. And I should say, lots of spoiler alerts, but if you haven't read it already, how? Anyway. But the fact that either of these two dickheads think of themselves as some sort of out there figure when they're literally defending capitalism and the American and military-industrial complex, I don't know how you can possibly get that you're a rebel in that scenario.
We are living
Because
in,
we're all Winston now.
yes, Winston, the protagonist of
We're all Winston now. Think about that for a second. In a world, in the novel, where conformity is legally mandated, and Winston defies that and wants to see the system burn, how the fuck can everyone be Winston? Because surely that would then be conformity. Like, they genuinely don't seem to have grasped even the most basic aspects of this. And by the way, this 31-minute video is going to take a long time for me to get through. Anyone who saw my last stream here, where I looked at a 20-minute video and it took 2.5 fucking hours, yeah, it could be fucking Wednesday afternoon by the time we get through with these two dickheads.
1984. Tell me if this sounds to you
Yes.
like a paragraph of a novel or like a news story about our world right now.
Wait, before you even read the quote, you could literally pick any quote
Yes.
from the book, and it is applicable now. So whatever.
Or even this the sex scene. What is that applicable? What? I mean, people are having sex, I suppose, but like, Dave, they literally describe public executions. There's a scene where, again, spoilers, where Winston describes the state having people who are considered to be like enemies of the state publicly execute those people on a stage in front of a baying mob of people. That doesn't happen now, outside of like fucking Saudi Arabia or whatever. But you know what I mean? Like they're talking about the West because they're only ever talking about the West, really. That isn't happening now. So no, Dave, you couldn't just pick randomly. There are lots of instances where this doesn't make any sense at all. You fucking idiot. God, this makes me angry. I'm going to try not to shout too much, though. I'm going to try and keep my cool.
Whatever you're going to
You're right.
say,
No, you're right.
I am going to agree, but I will jump off.
I've noticed
after-
this one actually, some people have been picking up on this. 1984 is having a sort of renaissance
It
these
is.
days.
Yeah.
Every record has been destroyed or falsified. Every book has been rewritten. Every picture has been repainted. Every statue and street and building has been renamed. Every date has been altered. And that process is continuing day by day and minute by minute. History has stopped. Nothing exists except an endless present in which the party is always right.
So they're going to say, because a couple of statues have been pulled down, that every single date has been erased? Every book? What books have been rewritten? Certainly not every book. Dave Rubin's book, unfortunately, wasn't rewritten. It shouldn't ever have been written initially, but what are they talking about? The farcical exaggeration. These people going about others being snowflakes and not being able to react appropriately to minor infractions upon people, and yet them being criticised on Twitter, or them, or a couple of, and it's like a tiny handful of statues have been pulled down of some truly egregious people, and that's equivalent to literally all of history being erased. I don't even know how to describe that other than snowflakery. It's so pathetically weak and brittle. It's fucking shameful, man.
Sounds like life on Twitter.
Yes.
David Rubin. I was literally saying that as like a joke, right? They're saying, oh, criticism on Twitter. And yet, he then goes, that sounds like life on Twitter. Every book has been rewritten because you got criticised on Twitter. Every date has been erased because of someone criticising you on Twitter. Or even giving you outright hatred and abuse, which, by the way, we all have, right? We all get that, and it's not cool. But clearly, someone calling you a dickhead on Twitter is not the same as literally all of history being erased. Like, genuinely, Dave, that's pathetic. Yeah, they're stuck so far up their own arses, it's embarrassing.
Right? I mean, an endless present, and that was part of what the system was trying to do. the Ministry of Truth, and Winston worked there, and he was one of the people that was basically using language to confuse people. He was intentional. I mean, that was the whole purpose of all of this, was to get people to question everything.
No, Dave. It wasn't to question everything, okay? It was to believe a falsity. That's very different. Questioning everything would expose a falsity. The system didn't want you to question anything. You have taken the exact opposite of what the book intended. The system didn't want you to question anything. They had a set truth, and that was it. The idea that you think that Big Brother wants you to question stuff shows how little you know of this book. Genuinely, you fucking idiot. It offends me on like a cultural core level that one of the great books of modern English canon, a book I love dearly from an author I love dearly, is being shat on by these two fucking idiots. I said I wouldn't get angry. It didn't last long, did it?
Right.
Well,
what does 2 + 2 equal again? I mean, this was the ultimate purpose.
I want to get to this language.
Yeah.
No, again, Dave, you stupid cunt. They're not asking you to question 2 + 2 = 4, or in the case of the answer they want is 5. They're saying, even though we all know that that's a false answer, we need you not only to give that answer, but to believe that answer. Not to question it, to literally accept the false answer. Genuinely, Dave Rubin makes me angry with his fucking stupidity.
Because I think this is the rookie. I'll just a quick summary for those of you who haven't read it yet. And if anyone hasn't read it, I guess you're getting the real life experience of it, but it's still worth reading.
You're really not. Well, outside of the fascist, the police in Portland and things that you two pricks are very happy about, apparently, but
To help you understand, especially your world right now. It's about Winston. As you say, Winston is this guy. He's living in a totalitarian state called Oceania.
Yep.
It's all run by one party. He's in the outer party. He's still in the party, but he's in the outer party. There's the inner party that really runs things. He works at the Ministry of Truth. What does the Ministry of Truth do? Spreads lies.
Spreads lies.
Rewrites the past.
Branding. It's all about branding.
It's all about
right?
branding.
it's not all about branding, but I mean, so far, a very trite reading of the book, but okay. As a summing up, okay, whatever, we go with it.
They have this area where they torture political dissidents. What's it called? The Ministry of Love. And the totalitarian government is referred to as Big Brother. Big Brother is always watching you through screens, through TV cameras, always monitoring you. Winston has this sort of illegal love affair with this girl, Julia, and they're just trying to escape this modern totalitarian madness. Finally,
Again, the modern. They even have to throw that. Conservatives are so obsessed with that somehow the past was so much better. I don't know. I mean, I suppose technically in 1994 that's true, but that's not what PragerU want to go through. PragerU are quite happy with the some elements of the 1984 world.
they're caught out.
Doesn't end well.
Does
for
not
them.
end well for him. And then, as you just alluded to, at the very end, they're torturing him and trying to break his spirit and trying to break his mind. How do they do it?
He fears rats, and they put basically a contraption on him with rats, and they're trying to, in effect, get him to sort of out himself and her and the people that are rebelling in.
Well, again, I mean, they've taken a really beautiful, horrifically so, but a really beautiful kind of analogy in a way for the way in which these systems operate. Firstly, they don't just put rats on him. They starve him. He's like an emaciated creature, a broken physical creature, and they do a thing in a place called Room 101, which is a phrase you may be aware of. This book spawned a lot of enduring cultural phrases and ideas and concepts. It's like Orwellian. It's literally the phrase that gets used now, Yeah, so they starve him. They discover through this process of torture that his biggest fear is rats. They then exploit that in order to completely crush his spirit. to completely crush the man. That's the point. It's not just he's scared of rats, so they put like a cage with rats in it around his head. It's to literally break the spirit. And by the way, you'll notice this is a really peculiar thing. PragerU love accusing every motherfucker of being Stalin, that they don't like, obviously. Stalin is like a byword for evil. Now, to be fair, Stalin was a very evil man. But that's not the point. The misuse of Stalin or whatever, or the misuse of that historical meme, is PragerU's, one of PragerU's go-tos. You're either Hitler or you're Stalin. Or possibly both in some cases. If Big Daddy Den Den doesn't like you very much. Anyway, but on this occasion, we're 4 minutes into the video, and at no point have they said, oh, this is an allegory against Stalinism? So, the one occasion where it would be very literal to invoke Stalin, to say this is a book written against Stalinism, they haven't. They've usually got some sort of weird fucking Stalin Tourette's, where Stalin accusations just fly out randomly towards people for whom it's not remotely fucking relevant or worthwhile, or apposite. But on this occasion, where it would be worthwhile mentioning, because that's the fucking point of the book, it's literally written against Stalinism, they haven't even mentioned it yet. This is not really so much a book club as two men spiritually masturbating in front of one another. That's what this is so far.
Essence. And he basically points to her and causes them to put the rat trap on her, and
sells her out.
That's sort of what we're dealing with right now.
Well, and there's also this...
No, it's not. It's not at all what you're dealing with right now, Dave. Having your entire spirit broken down to the point where you're just a husk, a robot creature, in essence, is not the same as someone swearing at you on Facebook. You fucking precious little twat.
This point, once he says, go get her, go get her, there's this intellectual admission where they say, what is 2 plus 2?
Yeah.
And what is 2 plus 2 is 4.
No. 5.
You have to say, you have to believe that 2 plus 2 equals 5.
Look.
Yes, exactly. That's the point. You have to believe that that's true. Which puts paid to the bullshit Dave was just saying a second ago, albeit it was about half an hour in this fucking video, but a few seconds ago in the PragerU video, about the system wanting you to question everything. No, they don't. They want you to accept whatever they say and question nothing.
Everything, it's so bizarre to see this right now, or to read this. So I originally read the book, I think I was in 11th grade. So this is like 92 or something like that.
When is 11th grade? I never know with these American shit. 11th grade. 11th grade, called Year 12 in England. Oh, okay. I'm with you. So, yeah. So basically the last proper year of high school before... Well, in America you do junior and senior year. In here it's called 6th form, anyway. So, yeah.
93, it's a long time ago. And then I reread it over the last couple months. And
or is it year 11? Oh, I can't even remember anymore. Is it the junior year? Yeah, it might be. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, so he was like a teenager. Okay.
You know, on Twitter, it's like everything that we're seeing, nothing means anything anymore. The way words are constantly used, or everything that we hear, without making this too political to the day right now.
So much of it,
you know, it is hard not to, but so much of what we hear about from the left is exactly what 1984 is about.
What in the fuck is he talking about? Genuinely, I'm not entirely sure. We'll play it on and see where we get with it.
So words are violence now, but violence is not violence.
Who says violence isn't violence? And words have always been violence. It's not words of violence now. Words have always been violent. Well, could always have been violence. They weren't always, obviously. Most communication, be it verbal or written or whatever, is not violence. But they can be. Of course they can be. They've always had that potential and have been used in that way. And who the fuck, genuinely, Dave, I'd be fascinated to hear who the fuck is saying violence isn't violence.
These are things that they create to actually make us question everything. And then once you question everything, well, then gender is up for question.
Gender has always been up for question. And what's wrong with questioning stuff, Dave? Because if your truths are so concrete, then question them doesn't mean anything. Because you'll question them and go, oh no, that's sound, and move on to something else. Questioning stuff's awesome. It's what makes humanity as successful as it's been, is trying to find the answers to things. And gender has always been up for grabs. Always. It's a social construct. As you well know, Dave. It's been explained to you, and I know you don't care, but I'll explain it for everyone. It's a social construct. Doesn't mean it's not real, okay? It means humanity has constructed it. Social construction, right? So, our understanding of it today is very different to what it was hundreds of years ago, or to different geographical locations. And a social construction doesn't necessarily mean it's correct. It could be that you've constructed it in a way that's wrong, that doesn't account for certain things like intersex people, non-binary people, trans people, whatever. So once that becomes more socially visible, people say, oh, well, clearly our social construction of gender was wrong. Let's adapt to the new things we found out. Rather than saying, no, I'm comfortable with boy has dick, girl has pussy, that's it. And that's the way it has to be forever. Otherwise I'm going to scream and cry on Twitter and claim that it's like a totalitarian fascist hell. Because someone wants to be called a different fucking pronoun. That's literally the difference. The difference between having your spirit crushed by the system, as in 1984, and a trans person having a preferred pronoun that Dave doesn't like. Dave Rubin thinks those two things are exactly the same. Mind-blowing.
And all of the things that should be settled are no longer settled. And then what I...
Should be settled. Again, Dave, tell me, why should anything be settled? When has anything ever been settled? I genuinely... The anti-intellectualism of the right is remarkable. It really is. No wonder they're flailing.
I completely forgot about that. I found was interesting is that one of the things that they're also trying to sort of untie, that the Ministry of Truth is trying to untie, is the idea of time. And it does feel like right now that time feels a little weird. It's partly because of the lockdown, partly because, you know, we're trapped at home, we're all on social media. But doesn't time feel sort of strange right now? Like any...
Yeah, because the usual patterns of life aren't quite happening in the way they did. I'm not sure what that's got to do with 1984, though. This is a very unique situation we're in right now, where because of the coronavirus and the lockdown and various restrictions and stuff, which are necessitated by there being this hideous, horrible disease which is killing loads of fucking people and infecting and hurting a lot of people. It's got nothing to do with like the government trying to fuck up your concept of time, Dave. I genuinely don't know why you would even bring that up. It's so... it's irrelevant. So irrelevant.
Anything could happen.
Imagine this, one of the great novels of all time, and they're talking about time seems a bit weird because of coronavirus. What kind of book club is this?
A given minute.
Right.
And I think that all leads to a sort of, well, sick society where 2 + 2 eventually will be 5 if they just tell you.
There are some...
Dave Rubin's stupidity knows no bounds. It knows no fucking limitation, ironically. Given that we was talking about restrictions a second ago. Yeah, that's... It leads to a sick society. Because everything was fine before coronavirus. Everything was super duper. Like, I've just noticed this piece of... Look at that as a piece of art behind you. Oh, God. Oh, that makes my skin crawl. Grim.
So many of these contradictions or absurdities that come up. I mean, the three slogans of the party that you've always got to repeat. They've got it on the back of the book right here. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. This could be the chants of protesters that we see marching all around the West.
Quite
No. No, they couldn't. I'm sorry, how does please stop killing us become ignorance is strength? Genuinely, how does that work in your mind, you fucking cretinous, gormless twats? How does... Oh, could you maybe not tear gas us in the street and arrest us for no reason and murder us in huge numbers? That's a bad thing, because these two rich white twats have decided. Like, it's... the staggering levels of dipshittery these two will engage in to defend their system, and yet they claim to be against the system. They're literally supporting the system right now.
Literally, I mean, one of the things that I talk about all the time now is that it's the anti-racists who are the racists.
You're right.
Dave Rubin is a meme. Dave Rubin is literally a meme. Anti-racists are the real racists. If he says, like, feminism is cancer or something at this point, I might actually come.
Right? If all the people that are running around now proclaiming that the rest of us are racists, they're the ones that are pushing racism into society everywhere.
This is supposed to be a book review about 1984, may I remind everybody.
They're the ones that are saying black people should have special dorms and that white people shouldn't, be allowed to have certain jobs, or that they should.
Yeah, it's the white people that are the real victims of racism. This is the so core of what it's such a great example of the core of what PragerU is. It's just trying to reassure rich old white boomer fucking conservative twats that they're the real victims.
Shouldn't be considered equally. Those are racist notions. So we live in a time where everything has...
And Dave would know about racist notions because he's platformed loads of them. Like, the racing IQ stuff from Stefan Molyneux. Saying that Alex Jones was part of the... Oh, so Stefan Molyneux was part of the New Centre and stuff. That kind of thing.
Been flipped. And for the few of us that have a little bit of the spark of Winston, it's like, how do...
I'm trying not to be angry. The idea that Dave Rubin thinks he has the spark of Winston makes me want to scream. But it's 2 a.m. There are young people next door who might need to get up early tomorrow for whatever reason. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to scream. But it's taken all of my energy not to do so. Dave, you are the system. You're being paid to pretend to be the system. I have no idea what your internal feelings or thoughts are, and I'm not entirely sure you know anymore. You're not really a person, you're just a bought and paid for billionaire fuck toy. You are the system. You defend neoliberal, conservative, capitalist, white Christian bullshittery. You are the system. Okay? You're not Winston. You're not fit to lick Winston's boots, especially because you should finish licking the boots you're already licking before you move on to new ones. It's only courtesy. They are paying you after all.
How do you make sure you're not one of the people who at the end is going 2 + 2 = 5? I'm not sure. I will tell you one other thing. I'm actually watching The Handmaid's Tale right now. Did you watch it by any chance?
I did. I've seen some of it, not the whole thing.
So I'm watching it right now, and the parallels to 1984 are absolutely incredible, because this is exactly what the main character, June, is going through. And it's so funny.
No. Just no. I don't know, can Margaret Atwood sue these two idiots? Probably not, but,
Because the show came out a couple of years ago and everyone kept saying, this is what's happening in Trump's America. Yeah. Except I'm watching it now in the midst of, what's happening with Black Lives Matter and everything else. And it's like, no, it's all the left.
It's this America.
It's this America, as in Trump's America. Am I going mad? Or is Donald Trump still the president, and yet they're like, this is happening in this America, not Trump's America? Motherfuckers, he's still in power, technically. Or in office, whatever. The fact that it's happening now is literally under his presidency. You can't divorce those two things. The fuck? Look at this smiling, gormless, glass-eyed twat.
This America, it's not Trump that's doing this, it's the other guys that are doing it.
Yeah, it's not Trump sending in fascist militia into Portland and Seattle and Chicago and New York. No. It's black people asking not to be murdered by police. Those are the real racists. Those are the real fascists.
So, I think more than anything else, there's a beautiful thing when you read a work of fiction when you can go, holy cow. This was not only, it must have been true or true enough to have made sense when it was written. What year was the book written?
The book was, written in 1948, published, I think, in 1949.
Okay.
Why didn't Dave Rubin look that up? He knew he was going onto a show to talk about this book. He didn't even bother to look it up. What an idiot.
So 49, I mean, think about that, 70 plus years ago. But yet feels like literally everything we're going through right now.
It's not at all, Dave. I genuinely, you're a fucking idiot. I can't stress that enough. I know I sound like a broken record at the moment, but he's so unbelievably wrong. This is such a bad reading of, well, a bad reading of the book, but more importantly, a bad reading of the situation we're currently in. The fact that you, Dave Rubin, are allowed to speak your mind, even though you claim to be a rebel, suggests to me that the government don't have absolute control over everything, in the way that they do in the novel.
Yeah, that's an incredible compliment to a writer and to a work.
And he articulates this concept. I mean, I think the great one you use is that the people who say they're anti-racist are the ones who are acting in a racist way. And the way...
Unlike PragerU, they would never do racist things. Not at all, no. There's no racism at PragerU.
George Orwell describes it as he calls it doublethink. Mm-hmm. So doublethink is this idea that you hold two contradictory ideas at exactly the same time.
Like the idea that Dave Rubin put forward earlier, that the system wants you to question everything, but also just accept what they say and don't question it. That would be a perfect example of doublethink. It allows you to play both sides of the argument, because you don't know what you're talking about. But okay.
So you can never admit that the ideas don't make any sense, but so for instance, we have to get rid of America's terrible past, which had segregation, and the way we're going to do that is institute segregation.
Through segregation.
Who's saying introduce segregation? Who's saying that? Who's genuinely, who is saying that? I mean, there might be some black separatists that are saying shit like that, but that's not a popular opinion, and certainly there's no legislation being put forward to that extent. So I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, you two pair of dickheads.
Look, think about it this way. What's like the hottest book on the left right now? It's White Fragility.
Yes.
What?
It's not the highest, but I've seen almost universal condemnation of the bullshit of White Fragility. Maybe it's a very, very liberal book, isn't it? But the left aren't in favour of that kind of shit. It's just performative nonsense.
That's the subtitle of White Fragility. I don't know what it is exactly, but in essence...
The subtitle's really important. I don't know it exactly, but it's something, and I'm going to elucidate now.
Since it's something like how white people can blah, 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 that's racist.
Saying that white people can do a thing is racist, right? White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. I'm going to look it up, Dave. I'm going to do the fucking thing that you didn't do. Why it's so hard for white people to talk about racism. So it's not even what he said. He said it was white people can do, white people should do, blah blah blah. And how is that genuinely? How is that racist? I don't know. Especially because on PragerU there are loads of videos that go, black people should do this. Is that then racism? I mean, in the PragerU sense, they are doing racism, but just saying that X group should or could do Y thing isn't racist at all. You don't seem to know what words mean, guys.
racist.
Yeah.
That in
Yeah,
and of
right,
itself is racist.
Yeah.
Forget white fragility. Well, but then if you say how white people, the implication is all white people are this, whatever.
No, not all white people. I mean, I can't speak for Robin DiAngelo, or for any author. But my reading of it is that it's not saying all white people are anything. It's saying there is a propensity in that community for that thing, which is just an analysis of a situation. It's not even saying that makes the group evil, because she's literally trying to help them. Or at least she thinks she is. I mean, I don't think she actually is helping anyone, but whatever.
Whatever this is, that is racist. So they hold these two ideas that are completely at odds with each other.
Then, I mean, they're so not, Dave. They're so unbelievably not. I assure you, there are very few people in the BLM movement who think that the White Fragility book and that kind of liberal, performative anti-racism is anything of worth. But even if they did, it still wouldn't be contradictory to the idea of being anti-racist.
And they hold it because that allows you to believe anything, basically, at any given time.
Which is the PragerU model. You can believe whatever you like, as long as it suits the rich.
This is the key.
Yeah.
You know, so many words just have entered our language because of this book.
Mm-hmm.
Words like doublethink or newspeak,
Mm-hmm.
or Big Brother is one. And newspeak is the one I want to focus on, because
Yeah.
newspeak is political correctness.
Yeah.
And the theory of newspeak is that the party, Big Brother, is going to get rid of all the old language that people have used for centuries and centuries.
Not really for centuries and centuries. You seem to have a really fundamentally stale concept of what language is. If you went back centuries and centuries, the English they spoke wasn't the English we would now really recognise. Have you tried to read Shakespeare? It's almost impassable at times. Because language develops and changes all the fucking time. Yeah. Now, in terms of newspeak, there's a difference between political correctness, which is trying to be accepting of more people, and newspeak as a criticism of Stalinist purging of certain types of language or certain ways of expressing oneself because it didn't fit in with the Stalinist goal. That's the point. So political correctness in that context, yes, but political correctness as in maybe don't say the N-word, not so much. And the fact that you would try and conflate those two is shameful.
And replace it with this new ideological, party-approved clean language, which sounds robotic, it sounds so crazy.
It sounds crazy and therefore is wrong. Big, high-level ideas. We are dealing with the highest of high-level ideas here, okay?
Instead of saying something is bad, you'll say it's ungood or double plus ungood.
Right. But so what does that sound like right now? It sounds like he, him, they, her.
Is Dave Rubin... He, him just means that those are the pronouns. He, him isn't a word. Like, Dave, you go by he and him. So your gender expression is somehow, or your gender pronouns are newspeak? It's mind-blowing. The level of stupidity here. Dave, oh, you're breaking me here. That's so dumb. That's so fucking dumb. He, him. It sounds like he, him. It sounds nothing like he, him. You fucking idiot.
All of these things. So again, it's like, wow, how did he do this in 1948? I'm not exactly sure. I think there's some relation to...
Time travel. Definitely time travel.
You know, it's after World War II, and there's obviously some parallels to the way the Nazis...
Now he knows. Now he could, because he was told earlier, 1949. He's thought, well, they're after the war. I can weave that in.
Nazis use language and things like that.
No, Dave. It wasn't really about the Nazis. I'm not saying it wasn't informed at all by Nazism, but it was an anti-Stalin tract.
But it's still pretty remarkable.
And I guess the premise, as you touched on,
Yeah.
is that if I change my words, if I change the language, I will change reality. This ties into the insistence of the government. You have to believe that 2 + 2 = 5, because if we all really believe that, then that will be true. And it seems to be the same thing when you call a he, when you call him her.
So it's just straight up transphobia now. They're not even like hinting at it anymore. Fuck both of these pieces of shit. Trans rights.
You have really substantively changed who he is.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about this is I think
No, because he was never he. That I mean, it's been explained to both of them. There's no point.
when most people, maybe not my conservative friends, but when most people think of like the totalitarian, authoritarian state coming, they always think it's going to be a far right state. Like the idea in 1984 is that the Ministry of Truth, like the whole apparatus, is somehow thought of as far right, I think.
Yeah, because the whole critique was that Stalinism and that kind of authoritarianism would corrupt socialism and it would become fascism, which is basically what did happen in the Soviet Union under Stalin. And that's the critique. So yes, it is far right. And generally speaking, totalitarian governments have been. Not that there haven't been left-wing totalitarian governments, of course, but yeah. But I mean, this is just Dave Rubin talking shit on PragerU, so what else would we expect? He's now going to say, no, it can't be right-wing because the authoritarian, the freedom and the liberties, or something.
I think is the idea. If you like something like V for Vendetta, it's the idea is that it's this far right political machine that's silencing people and everything else. And yet look what's happening in reality now. In reality now, it's this far left thing that's seemingly bubbling up from the bottom.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting flip on this. So
You're right, but the far left aren't really silencing anyone. You being criticised on Twitter is not you being silenced. Donald Trump, you know, the far right piece of shit that you two can't support, yeah, that guy is trying to silence people. That guy and his Department of Justice are literally trying to silence people from releasing information about Donald Trump that is embarrassing for him. Donald Trump is trying to silence people's right for peaceful protest outside of a courthouse in Portland. So yes, it is the far right, again, even right now, that is doing that. Whereas the left are calling you a transphobe on Twitter. I mean, forgive me here, but that's a bit snowflakey, isn't it? To use your own parlance.
it's one of those things where it's like there's so much truth, and yet there's still these like offshoots where you can kind of go, oh, it's not exactly right, but it's like it's pretty much there.
Well, even slightly beyond 1984, but still on the themes and still on George Orwell. George Orwell wrote a very famous essay called Politics in the English Language. And in it, he says that the word fascism...
I love the way that Dave agreed with that, like he knew that Orwell had written that essay. Yeah, that no one believes you, Dave.
No longer has any meaning. All fascism means is something I don't like. And when you look around today, that word, probably more than any other word, has been abused beyond having any meaning.
Yeah,
including on PragerU, where you've described everything at all that you don't like as fascist. Yeah, I agree. You have misused it, guys. You've described things like face coverings as fascist. You've got not being able to go to the barber to get a haircut as fascist. Dave Rubin, interestingly, won't call the alt-right fascist, though. Interesting. And yeah, but I mean, Orwell did write that, or was sort of to that effect. But the point is, he was writing about it in a very, very different context. He was writing about an actual definition of a thing that had just been defeated militarily in Europe, albeit it's sort of impossible to completely destroy it because unfortunately there's a very dark side to humanity. But he was talking about that and the fact that because of the war experience, fascism as a word had become like the very acme of evil. So every time you wanted to say that something was bad, you'd call it fascist or whatever. It's a very different context to the current one we live in, where political ideologies, at least in part because of fucking garbage merchants like yourself trying to muddy the waters, political ideologies aren't very well understood by a lot of people. And so words do get misused. That is true. But you're not helping the situation by saying, like, oh, Hitler was left-wing. The fuck?
Well, I think one of the interesting things is the way that we're all guilty of it at times, the way we all can use these words to mean more than they're supposed to mean, or we widen them. But look, this is something we've talked about forever. You call everybody a Nazi, congratulations, now nobody's a Nazi.
Well, yeah, but you do suck Nazi dick, you two. When you have fucking Stefan Molyneux want to talk about raising IQ and just nod along, like the gormless prick that you are, you're enabling the Nazis. That's just a fact, Dave. You fucking idiot. And again, I can't believe... Dennis Prager is a Jewish man. Dave Rubin is a Jewish man. They both like to mention it very often, even though they're both against identity politics. I know, interesting, isn't it? But they're both Jewish people defending on Dennis Prager's YouTube channel. Dave Rubin is defending neo-Nazism. It blows my mind. Guys, the people you're running cover for now, the people you're muddying the water for right now, want to put you in camps. They also want to put me in camps. So I'm not saying this isn't entirely not self-serving. Okay? Part of it is. But I don't want anyone in camps. You do, obviously, because you support Donald Trump putting children in camps. Different thing. Not exactly a different thing, but let's move past that for a second. They want to put you in an extermination camp. Just out of pure self-interest, guys. Stop.
You call everybody a fascist, and then when the real fascists come, nobody is going to be listening.
Again, as with the Stalinism Tourette's thing I mentioned earlier, if you call everyone communist, from like Bernie Sanders, who's a social democrat, through to actual communists, actually, people are calling Joe Biden a communist. Can you not see your own hypocrisy here? Really, can you not?
Or paying attention, it's the boy who cried wolf in essence. So I think there's just sort of this endless destruction of everything that's true. I guess that's really what the book is about in many ways, more than anything else.
Yes.
That there is truth, there actually is truth, and there actually is history, and there actually is time and a chronology that shows us.
Oh, chronology, big word.
What is real. But if you can destroy that, if you can destroy that fabric, you can get people to say 2 + 2 is 5, and it'll make...
Yeah, PragerU's exactly that. Any history video that PragerU does is almost certainly wrong. The only time I've ever given them any credit when it comes to history on PragerU is when they opened up their video on the American Civil War with, was the American Civil War about slavery? Yes. And my brain exploded. I thought, oh my god, that's the only true thing I've ever heard. They've run defence for Christopher Columbus. They have said that Adolf Hitler was left-wing. They've defended any number of far-right dictatorial regimes because they were neoliberal, and that's the whole point of PragerU. They've said all of this shit which is both morally and historically... morally repugnant and historically inaccurate. And yet they would come on here and say that it's the left trying to destroy history. No. Take your statues, put them in a museum where they belong. They're not teaching anyone anything of note, of worth.
Makes sense.
So I'm obviously frustrated as I read this because I look around and I say, oh my gosh, it's really happening. There's this little bit of the story that a lot of people don't talk about. But there's this recurring old nursery rhyme that Winston and Julia keep going back to, and the line goes, "Oranges and lemons, say the bells of St. Clement's. You owe me 3 farthings, say the bells of St. Martin's." And they seem to get this real joy, this real pleasure out of going back to just some nursery rhyme. It certainly doesn't sound like anything that now the party-controlled language talks about anymore. So there's this other part where...
What?
Winston is getting down and dirty with Julia, right? She tells...
How unbelievably cringy is that? Getting down and dirty with Julia. They were making The Beast with the Two Backs. Wink, wink.
And that she's been with lots of men before him. And...
Slut-shaming a fucking fictional character. What? I missed that little nugget upon first viewing. Yeah, that Julia had taken quite a lot of cock.
And instead of being repulsed by that, Winston gets excited and he says,
Instead of being repulsed by the fuck? God, are you a convent nun? The fuck is wrong with you?
anything that hinted at corruption always filled him with a wild hope.
Mm-hmm.
In this clinical, ideological society, how is it that actually a little bit of corruption fills you with hope?
Well, because humans are supposed to use their imagination. We're supposed to hope. We're supposed to dream.
Dave, use your imagination. You are a robot. The idea that you would like invoke imagination is remarkable.
We're supposed to have passion. We're supposed to have sex. We're supposed to...
We're supposed to have sex. Are these two old women in a knitting circle? The fuck is wrong with these two? We're supposed to have sex.
Live, right? Like, we're supposed to do all of those things.
Supposed to make mistakes.
You're supposed to make mistakes.
Right.
You're supposed to do things so that you can either realize they're good things to do that fulfill you, or maybe they don't, or they do in the short term, and then you have to reevaluate and all those things. But in a super sterilized world, when you can never break that conformity, then the tiniest hint, oh, I'm sleeping with somebody who's really been around the block, is suddenly really...
They've both now slut-shamed a fictional character. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Also, by the way, you absolute fucking idiots, you don't even seem to have realised that, or don't seem to have mentioned here, that the rules that apply to Winston and Julia are only for members of the party themselves, for the higher-ups. The proles, the vast majority of people, don't have that. Their world isn't sterilised. Not that they aren't controlled in a number of ways. They're kept in check by beer and football, which I like both of those things, but I'm not kept in check. Shut up. But yeah, they're kept in check by those things. It's the old bread and circuses mantra, but for, you know, at least a more modern age. So yeah, it's not a particularly sterilised world for the vast majority of people in that respect. But again, that nuance, the idea of that, is lost on these two idiots.
Suddenly really, really exciting. And by the way, we see many versions of that right now with political correctness, which is sort of like, if you keep everybody completely politically correct all the time, suddenly we'll all start wanting to be not politically correct. Now,
yeah, exactly. No one was saying the N-word before people said you shouldn't. That's just true. Dave is absolutely correct and totally not talking shit here.
I think that's good right now, right? We need more people to break out of it.
Yeah, we need people to be more racially offensive. Clearly.
But, you know, the idea of political correctness generally comes, I think, like most things, it's the road to hell is paved with good intentions. When people say they want to be politically correct, they want to make sure that people aren't offended. Now, you do that.
No, not just not offended, but not, like, hurt. Because, again, Dave, you may claim that words aren't violence. You know they are. You're a grown adult with, at least in theory, a functioning brain.
Too long, and what are you left with? You're left with just nothing. You're left with an inability to do anything. So
no, Dave, not saying the N-word does not mean you can't do anything. What the fuck are you talking about? This level of total overreaction to virtually nothing is just fucking amazing to me. Why would you care? Like, if you're not racist, as you say, why would you want to say the N-word? Why would you want to use the R slur? Or, like, it doesn't... God, it's such a small thing, and yet they act like it's the biggest imposition in the world. They literally are comparing not being able to say the N-word to having all of your freedom stripped from you by a totalitarian fascist state. It's ludicrous. It really is. I mean, as all leftists have to do when talking on the internet, I'm going to invoke Umberto Eco's fascism, where he discusses the concept of the massive over or underreaction to the massive overreaction to perceived threat or perceived imposition, and this is a perfect example of that. It seems to me that everything is like some sort of existential threat in some sense, and it isn't. It's just people wanting you to not racially abuse them, or whatever. Or there are other things as well, but it's generally speaking, don't be a hateful prick. And yet they're acting like this is some absolutely horrendous draconian thing, and it's not even law. It's just like social custom. People don't want to associate with bigots for the most part. Obviously, PragerU aside, of course.
When we watch people cancel each other on Twitter, and we
there we go, cancelling each other.
Watch mobs and everything go after.
And it's interesting that they would invoke cancel culture whilst talking about a book, or at least in theory they're talking about a book by George Orwell, because of course it would be remiss of me not to mention that George Orwell would despise both of these capitalist bootlicking goons, but also that he went to Spain not just to cancel fascists from being able to say the N-word on Twitter, but he went there to cancel fascists from breathing. He went there to kill fascists during the Spanish Civil War. Explicitly, okay? So don't you fucking dare invoke cancel culture in this, you fucking pair of dirt boxes.
For everybody, in a way, they're trying to pretend
and also, no pass around.
They're pious. I'm so great.
Right.
And if anyone else steps out of line and says something that I don't like, I don't believe, I'll destroy them because I'm so much better.
Yeah, Dave wouldn't claim to be, some sort of great figure or anything, apart from the fact he just compared himself to one of the great protagonists of modern English literature by saying he had the spark of Winston in him. But, it's everyone else pretending to be awesome. That's the problem.
Because I'm so much better, and because human nature can be perfected, right? I mean, that's
of course it can be. Of course,
we're on the path there.
If only we had the right language and the erasure of time and the erasure of statues and everything else. A little more power is always good.
Erasure of statues? No, just put them away in like a fucking museum with proper context around them and stuff. Then they would actually be historically informative. Whereas at the moment, they're just racist pieces of shit meant to try and stamp down racial minorities in America and tell them that white supremacy rules, which is why these two white supremacist dickheads are in support of them staying.
Good.
This is why when I think of Newspeak, when I think of Winston talking about the corruption, it reminds me that political correctness, which is our own version of Newspeak, it doesn't just divide along.
They've spent so long talking about political correctness, and yet it's such a tiny part of the book. Well, it's not even political correctness, it's Newspeak, it's a different thing entirely. I mean, old language still exists. They haven't obliterated any words via political correctness. Because that's not the point, is it?
Ideological lines perfectly. Or rather, should I say, partisan lines. It's not like it's only Democrats and no Republicans.
Absolutely.
And actually, what a lot of surveys show is that a big dividing line is wealth, how much money you make. People who would be considered by the lights of our society elites tend to be much more okay with political correctness.
Interesting that they're going to invoke we're populist, we're for the working man, even though they're being funded by multi-billionaire fracking pricks, and these two motherfuckers are rich as shit. But other than that, yeah, they're totally, these two are men of the people. It's like watching fucking Vladimir Lenin on the barricades here, these two.
Than people who are at the lower rung.
Well, Vladimir Lenin wasn't really working class. You know what I mean?
What's the difference between an old crazy woman and an old eccentric woman? It's money, right? If you're an old woman with no money and you're babbling on, you're the crazy cat lady. And if you're an old woman who's rich,
if you're an old woman who's rich, Dave Rubin will do anything for you if you pay him enough, because this man has sold himself completely.
She's eccentric.
What a character.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that really is it.
This is one of the...
So you accept that there's a certain privilege that comes along with wealth. So why do you support the continuing system of extraordinary wealth for people? If they analysed anything they said or believed for a second, it would crumble. I recall the Manic Street Preachers song title, "If White America told the truth for one day, its world would fall apart." It's so true.
The famous lines that Winston writes in his in his diary. He says, if there is hope, it lies in the proles, like the proletarians or the lower class of people. They don't really follow all these rules. They're kind of ignored by the party.
There's another word for that.
What's that?
The deplorables.
No. The deplorables are racist shitbags who support Donald Trump. You'll know, ladies and gentlemen, that Donald Trump lost the popular vote in the last election. So actually, no, Dave, it's not the deplorables. The deplorables are, again, alt-right gobshites. Actually go back and watch what Hillary Clinton said in that speech. It's not perfect, but it's actually an interesting thing. It's really silly that she even bothered bringing it up, particularly in the context of trying to run for president, but whatever. The deplorables are a tiny sect of neo-Nazi gobshites for the most part, as can be seen by the deplorable that was held on Donald Trump's inauguration night and the racist scum that proliferated therein. No, Dave, you're just wrong. You're so obviously wrong, and you so obviously know that you're talking shit.
The deplorables.
No, not the deplorables. Not at all. And, of course, the deplorables support a billionaire. So, I mean, again, you're the real man of the people, you two, aren't you?
Irredeemables.
Yeah, the irredeemables. That's exactly what it means. It means that the...
No, it is not exactly what it means, you daft cunt. The deplorables do not make up 95% of the population. As can be seen that even though only like a fucking third of the population voted in America, Donald Trump still lost the popular vote.
If there's any hope, it's that the people who the system constantly throws out, constantly mocks, constantly tries to destroy, they're the only ones.
No, he literally just explained to you that they're largely ignored by the party. Because they sort of take care of themselves by, drunkenness and all the rest of it. And yet he's now saying that they're being hated on by the system. They're not. They're ignored. You don't know what this book is. Your analysis of this book is so fucking wrong. On every conceivable level, you're just wrong.
Who will be able to say something true.
Yeah.
Even right now, just listening to what goes on in the political ether, it's like I hear a lot of people being like, I'd love to pull a John Galt one day, and just disappear altogether.
Come from Ayn Rand, another great book to read these days.
I assume the shrug.
Not yet.
You haven't done it yet? Oh.
Yeah, Ayn Rand, brilliant writer. Absolutely superb. I feel fucking ill just saying the words jokingly. Jesus. The fact that you would invoke shit like Ayn Rand whilst discussing a book by an actual legendary author is despicable.
But we have to do it.
Yeah, so, but that people will just self-select out, and then who will be left? The only people who will have a flicker of anything interesting to say will be the deplorables.
Right.
Yeah.
Fuck you. They've literally now just decided that deplorable means proletarian, which is so wrong.
This...
We know that it... Oh, Jesus Christ. Just look at the fucking demographics involved, mate. You're full of shit.
Deplorable issue, I think, comes up. I think there is a sense that the elites are just not even aware. The party is not even aware of the seeds of its own destruction. But there is a little bit of a performance.
Kind of feels like now, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
Just saying it kind of feels like now. What do you even mean? There's no explanation, is there? It's just vaguely gesticulate at something. That's enough. Yeah, it feels like now. How does it feel like now? You could explain that. I mean, I'm not even saying they're wrong, although I suspect they're right for the wrong reasons if they are right, but as they've given me nothing to work with, what can you do?
But the performance is what worries me even most. You mentioned Twitter.
Yeah.
On Twitter.
Oh, God. When talking about one of the great... Again, I don't want it to sound like I'm overselling it, but it is one of the great works of modern literature. To reference back to Twitter constantly tells you the level of intellect, quote-unquote, that we're dealing with here. that it's about Twitter. The fuck are you supposed to be doing a book talking about 1984? Oh, fucking hell. It's painful to see one of the things I hold up as like a cultural icon being shit on by these two fucking idiots. It's cathartic. That's why I do this. I love ranting, but it's genuinely quite painful as well.
It seems like every day now, some random person is plucked out of obscurity. We are all whipped up into a frenzy to hate this person.
They did something in Central Park that I
didn't.
So Dave's now standing the Central Park woman. And not just that, but Dave, you and your ilk have constantly gone after leftists for saying anything. So don't pretend that you've got like completely clean record on this, alright?
Yeah. Like that she yelled at a guy or whatever.
Yeah.
No, not yelled at a guy, called the police on an innocent man. The fuck is wrong with you two lying bastards?
And now this person is the villain of the country.
Yes.
And then that's gone. Goes down the memory hole. Remember, another term that comes from 19...
No, not down the memory hole. It's just, it moves into the past. The memory hole means it's not available anymore. It's gone. It's disappeared. The fact that you two cunts are able to still talk about it, and I know the reference, means it hasn't been memory holed. The fuck, man? It's so bad. It's such an incorrect reading of the book. If Orwell could rise from the dead, he would bitch slap the pair of you. I swear to God he would.
Yeah. Is completely erased and forgotten about.
No, not erased and forgotten about. You're literally talking about it. Weeks after it happened. Can you not see how literally you having this discussion refutes the things you're saying?
There was a category in 1984 called 2 Minutes Hate. Mm-hmm. Every day, all the people in the party are whipped up to hate the villain, the rebel, the Goldstein.
Right. And again, this would be a perfect point for you to point out that it's written about Stalin, and the Goldstein character is obviously a direct reference to the fact that Leon Trotsky is the Goldstein person. He's Jewish, right? And part of the reason that Stalin was able to whip up hatred against Trotsky is because he was Jewish. He's explaining the anti-Semitism involved there. You could bring that up now. That would be a worthwhile addition to the conversation, to explain that context to your viewers. And it would still be anti-communist, which you love. So you could do that, but you're so bad at this that you don't seem to even know that that's what this is like a parable of. It's remarkable. Idiots. Fucking idiots. And again, the point is, it's always Goldstein. Every day. The fact that a new Twitter thing happens and it's a new person every time sort of puts pay to the point, really, doesn't it? You're just wrong.
Goldstein is the man. They put him on the TV screen. You gotta just hate this guy. Yeah. 2 minutes, then it's over, then you move on.
Yeah, sort of feels like The Purge, right? The movie The Purge. I mean, the idea is you get one day a year to do all the horrible stuff. That's what the movie The Purge is about. And yes, this is what we do. We find these people who are nobody.
And interestingly, you daft bastard, the Purge movies are essentially kind of leftist. If you look at it, it's often the rich that are terrible and shown to be as such, and it's the poor who suffer. They're actually, I mean, they're not very good films as it goes, but they're basically anti-capitalist, or certainly anti-rich people or whatever, which is ironic you would then invoke it on PragerU, but whatever.
These that have no effect over your life, that you've never heard of, they did something you don't like, destroy them. And really it's never about them, right? It's always about the signal that sends across the world, which is you don't want to be that guy. Right. You don't want to be that guy. But wait, there's one other thing I want to touch on, Winston, which is as he's working at the Ministry of Truth, and as he's obscuring reality and changing words and all of this stuff, he's miserable.
Yeah.
And I think that that's actually really interesting, because I think if we look at the people who are the most politically correct now, they are miserable.
Dave, all you do is complain. All the time. I don't know where you get off with the hypocrisy here.
Because that is not, it's anti-human in many ways. To be so against...
Yeah, to be nice to people is anti-human. That is conservatism to a T, isn't it?
Thought. To be so against someone joking, even if that joke crosses whatever your subjective line is. To be...
Yeah, to find a joke that's offensive is anti-human. Big high level ideas.
So against that is actually the reverse of what being a human is, which is about using your mind. So I think it's just sort of interesting that the people
use your mind,
were
Dave?
the ones putting this stuff into the world were miserable.
Are the
while
most
they were
miserable.
Doing it. Yeah.
And Winston, he needs to take shots of this gross.
Also, again, people choose to be politically correct if they want to. The reason that Winston was so incredibly upset and angry at the world was because he was forced to do that. He didn't have a choice. Again, the parallels are not accurate at all.
Gin just to get through the day. But then when he's got this love affair, this little secret hideout with Julia, all of a sudden he doesn't need the gin. He doesn't need the substances.
And by the way, you know, they've done a couple articles I've seen about Facebook censors that all become alcoholics and miserable and suicidal. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
Because they're literally doing the exact same thing Winston is doing. They're looking out on Facebook and they're going, what can we get rid of? What word is okay? What word is not okay?
Or it could just be that alcoholism is prevalent. It's a thing that happens. So yeah, there might be, if there are 100 Facebook censors and 10 of them become alcoholics or whatever, and then they do an article, oh, look at all these examples of Facebook alcoholics. Who cares? I mean, not who cares, obviously. I hope those people get the help they need. But the point is, it's not statistically relevant. And again, Dave, you didn't read the thing. You read the headline, didn't you?
Do I kind of like this guy? Then I can let that one slide. Do I don't like this guy, so we got to take care of that. And they become miserable because of it.
But the most depressing part of this book, I thought we'd already gotten there.
So it was funny because when I was rereading it, I was like, there has to be something at the end that will kind of like want us to continue, right? Especially people like us that put our thoughts out there, right?
That put our thoughts out there.
And it doesn't really give you anything.
The most depressing.
If they are probably going to shit on my favourite passage of literature in the world, which is the end of this book, because it is phenomenally sad. Both Winston and Julia are broken by the system and broken down into becoming robotic adherents to what the system wants. And so they meet on a park bench. They still know who the other person is, but that love, that spark that had existed between them has gone. And the way Orwell writes it is fucking soul-crushingly beautiful. It hurts. It physically hurts to read it. And anything that can elucidate that kind of emotion from you, it's beautiful. These two are probably going to say, oh, they're not having sex anymore, or something. You know what I mean? They're going to shit on my favourite passage of literature. And it's going to test my not screaming thing again.
The interesting part of this book for me is that there's this rebellion, that this revolution, the 2 minutes of hate, Goldstein, right?
No, what are you talking about? No, there's no revolution here. What Winston and Julia do is fuck, and Winston keeps a diary he's not supposed to. It's rebellion in the sense that he's doing something he shouldn't, but it's not a revolution.
Goldstein has a secret book, and the book is going to tell you all about that party, and it's going to... So Winston meets these other people in the inner party. They give him the secret book. He reads the secret book, and it turns out it's a setup. Or if it's not a setup, it's still a setup.
Yeah.
Because he's given the book by a member of the inner party that in this system, it even has its own opposition within it. There is no escape.
Right.
Even that opposition might be a false hope or a safety valve on the utter oppression. What are we supposed to do with that?
Well, I think...
No, okay, so he's not going to do that, okay.
This is what people would say is sort of like our political system now, is like this sort of fake duopoly.
Yes.
Which you two completely play into by sucking Donald Trump's dick, okay.
Right, it's like this fake, we've got, the Democrats or the liberals and the Republicans, the conservatives, whatever, and it's like, it seemingly is that those are the only choices. And yes, as long as the system only allows those choices, well, then those are the only choices. But are those really the only choices? You got to believe this or you got to believe this. I mean, no one really lives their life like that.
You two do. You do black and white politics all the time. Everything's a dichotomy with you two.
But
you literally were just saying, earlier you were saying going about being a gender binary.
Unfortunately, the whole system, and in this case, everything that he was led to believe, leaves you with that. And that uncomfortability is even worse.
This is
knowing about it, right? Like, it's easier to just be a guy on one side or the other side, whatever it is, and then just run with it. But to know it and then be like,
what do I do now? Because you look and it seems like no matter who wins the election, no matter which party wins, certain things just keep on happening. We lose more and more of our freedoms. We rack up more and more of our debt. The culture keeps going more and more in one direction.
So Donald Trump hasn't done the thing he said he was going to do then? But you'll still support him?
It doesn't seem to matter who wins.
I dare make a pro-Trump comment. I don't know if I'm allowed.
Will certainly be censored.
What are you talking about? When have you been censored for that? Ever?
By the Ministry of Truth on the internet.
Somebody's not going to be happy about this.
The Ministry of Truth. When have you been censored? Genuinely tell me, guys. Because you two don't shut the fuck up. You've got a big platform here with 2.7 million subscribers. How have you been silenced or censored for your pro-Trump speech? At all? You may have been criticised. Again, but if cancelling is just people criticising you, what's the problem with cancel culture exactly?
But in many ways, when I was rereading it, I kept thinking, man, what they needed was a Trump. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because what was Trump, or what is Trump? He just sort of broke through all of this.
No, he didn't. He hasn't remotely broken through anything. He gave a tax cut to the mega rich and tried to take healthcare away from people. How has he broken through anything? What you mean is he's been racist and got away with it. Which is ultimately what you want. Which is why you rail against fucking political correctness.
If you're talking about how do you break the duopoly, how do you...
Imagine that. Imagine reading the book 1994 and saying what they need is a Trump. When Trump is literally sending in, again, it's worth pointing out, unmarked vans full of unmarked fascist militia to, destroy peaceful protests. Yeah, I mean, the idea that Trump is anything other than the Big Brother character is remarkable. Absolutely. I mean, the dipshittery of Dave Rubin is anger-inducing.
You break the false choices. How do you break political correctness? All of these things.
How many times have they mentioned political correctness in this fucking video?
Who has been the greatest breaker of those things? It's been Trump, so it's like...
No, it hasn't been. It hasn't at all been. What has he done, Dave, that's broken that in any way? The motherfucker was going about people losing their freedoms. They're losing their freedoms all the time under Trump. He was going about the debt being racked up. The debt has exploded under Trump because he's given huge tax cuts to rich bastards whilst vastly increasing the already massively over-bloated military budget. The deficit is way bigger than it was and the debt is just huge. Or huge, I suppose.
In a weird way, if the book had ended and there suddenly was this person who was just willing to do it for some very bizarre reason, and perhaps he was orange and had weird hair. Yeah. Like, then I guess you see some hope, but you...
That, I think, sums up the shilling that's going on here. That even though obviously Trump, the Trump character is either you can view him as the president of as the Big Brother character, especially with the anti-Semitism, or you can see him as that, or him being as a private citizen having absolutely no real role in the 1984 universe at all, and yet Dave Rubin thinks he would be a sign of hope in that, even though he's clearly completely out of place. The level of ignorance here. I would be surprised if Dave Rubin has actually read this book recently. He said he read it when he was a teenager. That's probably true. It gets read in high schools across the English-speaking world, and very possibly beyond. I don't know, but there's no way he read it recently. I don't think, because he's gotten everything wrong so far.
You don't get the orange.
I hate to be more pessimistic than you, because I see the same sort of thing you do.
Yeah.
I think part of the reason why people in both parties don't like Donald Trump is because he broke the rules. He messed up the system a little. Though I do think it sort of remains to be seen.
He didn't mess up any system. Well, he didn't mess up the capitalist system. He messed up the America being vaguely respected around the world system. That's certainly true. But I'm not sure that's necessarily a good thing. It could be, but it's if so, it's unintentional on Trump's part.
If that will have a lasting effect, or if the culture and the politics keeps careening in this same direction.
Yeah.
Well, if he's so great, how hasn't he stopped it? If he's broken through it, how hasn't he not stopped it then?
The question I want to leave you on is, how do you think he did it? What was it that he...
This is amazing. This tells you everything you need to know about Dave. He's about to ask Dave Rubin how Orwell did this, right? And Dave Rubin shows he's fundamentally completely ignorant of the book. Completely ignorant of what he was writing about, because they still haven't mentioned Stalin at any point in this, which is ridiculous. But anyway.
Saw in the 19...
listen to Dave Rubin completely back out because he doesn't know what he's talking about.
1940s that could predict our present moment.
Yeah, so I thought a lot about that because I had a feeling you might come at me with a question like that. And as I sort of referenced earlier, so he wrote it in the late 40s, so you're coming off of World War II. So I don't know specifically, and I'm sure people have thought about this a lot, and I was...
He doesn't know. I don't know exactly. What do you mean? You haven't referenced the very fucking thing that this is the story about. The story of this is about. This is an allegory of Soviet politics, and how that could turn out if it took over the world, or took over, big chunks of the world, whatever. Dave, oh God, your ignorance is profound. You fucking idiot.
Really trying to think through. I think maybe more than anything else, what makes good literature or what makes a good movie.
See, he's not even talking. He's not even answering the question now. He's not talking about what George Orwell did to write this book. He's now just talking again. So absolutely typical for Dave. Don't talk about anything specific or worthwhile. Talk in vague generalities about what's good literature or something.
Or any piece of art that's true, is that it is able to capture something that is timeless. And the struggle constantly, this is why the struggle right now, even though we think of it as Democrat versus Republican or Trump versus Biden or whatever it is, it's like all it really is always is you versus the system.
Yeah, you're such a rugged individualist, Dave. What the fuck is he talking about?
The individual versus the system. And sometimes the system is better, meaning it's more open to freedom and more open to individuals, and sometimes it's not. And I think that is what was carried through from 1948, 49 into 2020, and it feels right now.
This is so surface level. All of this is so... It's paddling pool depth. This general bullshit. It's just, freedom and liberty and the individual and the state and 1949. It's just... you could get this analysis from a 10-year-old doing a book report. It's nothing. You've said nothing of worth in response to a perfectly reasonable question. How did he, what did Orwell see that has become sort of timeless with this book or whatever? And Dave Rubin's given nothing of value in response. Even though it was a pretty open-ended question, and you could have gone a lot of different ways, having to mention the fact that it's an allegory for Stalin and Stalinist politics in the USSR, because that's literally the reason that, the book was written. And essentially as a warning to socialists not to do authoritarian socialism, ideally, because he was a democratic socialist. But you could take it 1,000,001 different ways in terms of answering this question, and Dave has gone with the most bland, most generic, surface level shit. There's no. I've said this before. Freedom of speech is hugely important, but for some people, they don't use it for anything. Freedom of speech means a lot, but I'm more interested not so much in philosophical concepts or whatever. It's the concrete impact it has on the world. And for a lot of people, like George Orwell, who used their freedom of speech for worth and value, that was enormously positive. Whereas Dave Rubin has totally wasted his free speech on talking shit. High level ideas. Imagine this motherfucker going about high level ideas and this is the answer he gives. Why was one of the greatest works of modern literature written? Well, let me ramble meaninglessly about politics for a little bit, and then hopefully you won't know that I'm an ignorant twat who can't answer that very simple question.
That the system is very against the individual, and
I think that might be.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you have a better answer on that?
Do you have a better answer? Dave, I've produced turds from my bumhole that could have a better answer than that. And they would smell less of shit, ironically, than the bullshit you produced there.
I don't know if I have a better answer. I think your point is right, that George Orwell is this individualist, and he's kind of looking out at the system.
He's an individualist. George Orwell was a socialist. He was a democratic socialist, so he's against that kind of authoritarian streak within socialism. That's certainly true. But the idea that you would pray and aid a man who was a communist as an individualist, considering you think communism is the exact opposite of individualism, is surprising to me. No, it's not surprising to me. What am I talking about? It should be surprising because it's so wrong, but it's PragerU, so why would I be surprised at that? It's PragerU's entire bit. They'll take anything from the past that sort of vaguely hints at anything that could be twisted into a conservative narrative. Like they're trying to reappropriate Martin Luther King, for instance. It's another fine example.
Though I, again, might have a more pessimistic view on your point about literature, it would seem to me we can see...
What point did he make about literature? That that it needs to be timeless? I mean, again, pretty bland. I'm not sure that's worth really...
Communism fails because it just totally misunderstands human nature.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, babe. That's the route you want to take, even though this is literally saying socialism can work, but it needs to go a different route. Again, you're talking about a man who was in favour of communism.
The way communism ends up is so different from the theory of communism. They're so disconnected that it can't work. And the same thing is true of fascism.
It can't work. Not that it doesn't work, or it hasn't worked so far, that it can't work. And this man knows all of the things.
I think the question we're maybe trying to deal with now is that true of liberalism too? We've got these three great ideologies of modernity, fascism, communism, and liberalism. We thought that liberalism was the last one standing, it's the end of history. That's what we were told, at least by the people at the end of the Cold War. Well, maybe history takes a little bit longer to resolve. And as
no, this is what you're bringing to me at the...
The end of history was always a stupid phrase. It was always a really stupid, conceited nonsense. It was the head rush, or a rush of blood to the head of uber-capitalist dickheads who felt that after the fall of communism they'd won, and that was that. As if history stands still, ever. Like it was so stupid as a concept. Madness. And I know it wasn't invented by those capitalists. It was Japanese guy whose name has totally escaped me. Anyway, he was the one who came up with the phrase, but it was taken on by these fucking neoliberal dickheads. Anyway,
you're handing me the "Is liberalism dead" at the end of this thing. This is my life's work.
I know this is
This is my life's work. Yeah, liberalism has been Dave's life work. No, Dave, you talk shit on the internet, mate. Liberalism has been my life work. Fuck off.
Really, I didn't. You thought that
this was an incredible sham to get me here.
You thought 1984 was depressing at the end. Yeah. This is the most depressing part.
But well,
this entire discussion has been depressing. Yes, that is true.
I am glad you brought that up though, because that is the part of me that is fearful of what is happening right now. Is that the experiment of liberalism and the experiment of free speech and enlightenment and all those things, that it really does feel like it's getting to its end right now. That the end of it is that this more liberal, supposedly, this ultra-lefty progressive thing.
There we go. Ultra lefty progressive. Yeah, the incredibly radical politics of Joe Biden
will come in through the soft spot of liberalism, the openness of liberalism, and dismantle every statue, destroy every university, crush every newspaper. I mean, everything.
Well, firstly, newspapers are dying anyway. That's got nothing to do with the far left or whatever. We don't want to crush statues. We want to put them in a proper context in a museum. I mean, there are some that might be crushed or whatever, but I don't really care. The idea that the right are for openness and freedom, like they're literally these anti-porn fucking weirdos who at any moment are about to do a Gamergate or a fucking satanic panic again. It's ridiculous.
Great achievements of liberalism.
And that's exactly what this book is about.
Yeah.
So how he saw it, I guess, yes, it is a connection between 10 years before the Nazis were literally burning books. What are we doing right now? Yeah. We're not burning books yet, although
Yeah, there we go, Dave. Almost a moment of, like, he almost realised, he catches himself as you're about to say here, but yeah, what the Nazis were burning books. And what's happening? Well, we're not actually burning books, but you know. Yeah, we're not burning books, Dave. You even wrote a book called Don't Burn This Book, and no one burnt it, because it wasn't worth bothering with, let alone burning. You were hoping people would burn it, so you'd be like, see, you're proving my point, the left, blah-de-blah, and no one gave a fuck, because it was shit. Anyway, but let's... And also, again, it wasn't written about Nazism. They literally, in this book review, have not mentioned what this book is about at all.
Though NPR did put out that thing about how you have to decolonize your bookshelf, which in essence is a modern book burning.
Book.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't at all. It's about you not having certain types of books, potentially, in your house. And again, not enforced. The state isn't burning those books or getting rid of those books. It's saying, like, oh, here's a thing you can do if you want to. Like you could, decolonise your bookshelf. That's not a modern book burning, Dave. That's literally people deciding, oh, maybe I don't need that book and that book. And then give it to like a charity shop or a local library or whatever, I don't know. Or burn it, I suppose, if they want to. Again, it's their own property. The point of book burning is the state burning books so people can't read them, which is slightly pointless in the modern era because everyone reads stuff on like Kindles and fucking tablets and whatever, PDF documents and such. But the idea is the state trying to say, no, we're not going to allow you to read these degenerate books. Individuals doing something is not the same, because literally burning a book is just burning some paper, in essence. You're not actually stopping other people from reading the book. It's when the state does it to all of the copies of a certain book, including, ironically, I forgot what was it called, the Centre for the Study of Sex or whatever, which was one of the first pieces of trans research done in the Western world, and the Nazis burnt that. Something you have in common with the Nazis there, Dave.
They're not going to write, burn all your books, but they will say, get rid of bad books.
Yeah. But again, not get rid of, not destroy, not ban other people from reading, just maybe if you want to, take it off your shelf. That's it, Dave. That's not a book burning. Again, the wild overreaction to one piece on NPR about advice about if you want to decolonise your bookshelf. That's it. That's the equivalent of the state burning all copies of a book to stop anyone reading it, apparently.
1984?
No, not 1984. Not remotely 1984. Fucking idiot.
Right. This is it. I wish that we could have...
I'm trying not to shout. I don't know if you noticed. I don't want to wake people up. It's fucking 3 a.m.
A greater hope here,
man.
But we can't. It is.
So what is the hope? What really is the hope? Because as I was reading the end, I kept thinking maybe I'm forgetting that there is a glimmer of hope at the end.
You know what? Here is.
He didn't read it recently, did I? He genuinely doesn't. He hasn't read it recently. That's how lazy this motherfucker is.
My hope, I suppose, at the end, which is a little bit of a plug for this show as well. You cannot remain a slave if you are literate and you read. You can't do it. This is why all the totalitarian regimes in history have tried to burn all of the books, have tried to stop people from reading.
No, not burn all the... Oh, God. Even the Nazis didn't burn all of the books, just the ones they didn't approve of. They didn't try and stop people from reading at all. What are you talking about? Like, yes, authoritarians have always tried to control the flow of information, which, by the way, you should look into what Trump's doing in that regard. But no one who's burnt books burnt literally every book. It wasn't like in Nazi Germany there were no books at all. Reading was banned. Like, yeah. And not just that, but I mean, it's kind of a profound statement he's saying initially with you can't remain a slave if you're literate or whatever. Which is kind of true. It was something I was saying the other day in response to Tim Pool's anti-education thing. An educated society is a confident one. And that's he's correct here in saying you can't remain a slave if you're literate. Not literally, of course, but you know the general point stands. But then follows it with the totalitarians are burning all the books. Literally, it's like a game of, I mean, in Britain they call it Chinese whispers, where you say a thing to another person and it goes around and it becomes a completely different thing by the time it gets back to you. The right wing, the conservative dickheads do constantly. Someone said decolonise your bookshelf. Oh, the books. Oh, they're coming for the books. The books are being banned. Movies are being banned. All of the books ever. They're burning all of the books ever. And it just becomes such a hyped up nonsense. It's
have tried
shit.
To have anti-literacy laws, and what George Orwell is
anti-literacy laws.
describing here, the reason it resonates with, not just now, perhaps at a particularly Orwellian moment, but it has resonated for so many years, is because he is describing something that we know is real, something that we experience to varying degrees throughout our entire relationship to politics. Mm-hmm. And as they burn the books, as they topple the statues, as they erase the history, as they...
Who is burning the books? Who? Name one fucking person who is burning books. Who's calling for books to be burned? What the fuck are you on about? Some people have been toppling statues, I'll give you that, I've seen it. It's fucking hilarious. Who's burning books?
A memory hole.
No one's getting memory holed. No, there's nothing being memory holed. Please stop saying that phrase. You don't know what it means.
Everything that we cherish, that we thought we could rely on. There is still a little bit of hope, I think, for those of us who are willing to crack the spine of a book or two and see the vast difference between reality and all the propaganda that the system is spewing at us.
The system is spewing at us. The fucking temerity, the sheer neck on these bastards at PragerU to accuse others of producing propaganda. Remarkable. Absolutely fucking remarkable. It's shameless. It's totally shameless.
Knowles, I want to let you end the show.
He keeps calling him Knowles as well, which is his surname, so it's not like inaccurate. It's just call him by his, who calls someone by their surname? So it's just a bit strange.
Go with that because it was a perfect, beautiful ending. But I have like 10 things I want to say about
Well, lay it on me. Let's do it. This is the time
idea,
to do it. This
idea of the memory hole.
Before they censor us. Who's censoring any of you? Genuinely, you two never shut the fuck up. You have big platforms and stuff. Before they censor us. Oh, you dickheads. Look at that shit-eating grin.
Wanted to mention it before.
Yeah.
But don't you feel like that's something we're also going through right now? That we forget, wait a minute, 2 years ago, the biggest thing was Michael Cohen testimony is going to take down Donald Trump, or Russian this, or
Stormy
Ukraine
Daniels.
that, or remember,
Ukraine.
a little before your time, Y2K was going to kill all of us.
Yeah.
That these, what's going to kill us now? 5G is going to kill us. And
No, only your fans are saying 5G is going to kill us. Only conspiracy dipshits are saying that. And yeah, by the way, you've just gone through something of a litany there of Donald Trump's corruption. But you'll still support him because, that boot isn't going to lick itself, is it?
Neutrality was supposed to kill us, and we killed, what's his name, in Iran. We killed
Soleimani.
Soleimani.
World War III.
And that was going to start World War III. But they all get memory hold.
Yeah.
They
Stop saying memory hold. That's not what it means. People forgetting that it happened or not talking about it because it's not fucking relevant anymore. It's not memory holing something. Memory holing is literally taking a piece of information that existed that was accessible by people and removing it so it is no longer accessible by people. It is the obliteration of previously available data. Okay? Everyone still remembers the Soleimani thing. It's just no one talks about it because it's not really relevant anymore. It's tiring. It's so tiring listening to stupidity. But I do love it.
We suddenly were outraged for this period of time. And also even something more perverse. Like, they all happen in these very short bursts also. And then once that period of time is over, you never do it again. So remember Me Too, it burned hot for like 3 weeks. And then the second we like closed the book on that.
Yeah.
Who's closing the book on anything? I mean, that just shows you the attention span you have. That you've only kept up with it. Oh, it's gone now. No one's doing that anymore. You know Harvey Weinstein's still being tried, right? You know, like, Ghislaine Maxwell's just been arrested and is about to be tried. Like, it's still ongoing, man. What are you talking about? Things like... So social movements don't just stop, Dave. It's not even just stupidity. It's a complete lack of inquisitiveness. It really is. I mean,
we move on. It's not as if those things still aren't happening or something else. But
so he literally says it. He literally says it's not as if they're not happening. So what's the fucking point you've made then?
That, and then the other thing was that...
And he moves straight on. Nothing. Okay.
The phrase Orwellian, it's not just the other phrases, but his name actually became a phrase. That tells you something really good happened.
It tells you he wrote a good book.
Yeah, he only wrote one good book, obviously, not like tons of them. It's not like you could do the exact same thing with Animal Farm or Road to Wigan Pier or Down and Out in Paris and London or Keep the Aspidistra Flying or any of those other books, no. And one of the great essayists as well, and letter writers and journalists and all of that. No, he wrote one good book, yeah. Good. The surface level stuff here is just shit. And not just that, but to the point I made earlier about if you use Nazism so much it doesn't mean anything. If you describe everything as Orwellian, if you describe being asked to wear a mask in public as Orwellian, if you describe someone asking you not to use the N-word as Orwellian, Orwellian stops meaning anything, really, doesn't it? Because Orwellian means, like, literally the state clamping down on you. Draconian, overbearing authoritarianism. Not, could you maybe not misgender someone, please? That would be cool. Do you see the difference? Like, the overreaction from these fucking idiots is infuriating.
Yeah, that's a good book.
In the spirit of telling people to go out and read books.
Yes.
In the spirit of not burning books. Yeah. We should tell them to read your book. Don't burn this book.
I'd like to believe.
You shouldn't read that book. I have read that book. It is not a good book. It's so shit. I'll keep meaning to do like a proper breakdown of it, but I can't be bothered. It's almost not worth it. I might still in the end at some point, but it's wank. As you can look, he can take a great piece of literature and make me angry. So his shit piece of literature is... Actually, maybe I wouldn't be angry because it's just so bad that I don't care about it. The reason that this is angering is because I love 1984. Not the world of the novel.
I'd like to believe that my book is in many ways the last... I mean, I don't want to be so hoity-toity, but
it's better than George Orwell. Yeah, it's better than 1984.
It is Rubenesque.
It is Ruben.
Oh, God.
Rubinellian.
It's
Rubinian.
Rubenesque. They would describe a large woman. She was Rubenesque.
It's a painting thing. I did that joke earlier.
But it is, in many ways, everything that I wrote about in that book is fighting for the same things that Winston ended up sort of...
You know, he was talking earlier about the left self-aggrandizing about how pompous they are and how they big themselves up so much. Dave Rubin is just like Winston Smith. He's fighting for the same things.
Giving away. So read 1984. Forget Don't Burn This Book. It's a good book too, but read 1984.
It's not a good book too. It's not.
Good sequel.
Yeah, it's a pretty good sequel.
It's a good sequel.
Yeah.
This one first.
If I end up in a contraption with rats on me, I'm putting you. It was Knowles, guys.
I'm going to be on the inner party. I'm going to be the one who ratted you out. You kidding me? Dave, thank you so much. We could talk about this all day.
Yeah.
But we'll have to move on to do your book next. I'm Michael Knowles. This is the Book Club. See you next time.
Idiot. Anyway, yeah. So that was that. Look at that. Smooth transition. God, I'm good. Anyway, yeah, they went a whole half hour talking about a book and didn't once mention what the book was actually about. Which is pretty fucking special. That's pretty good going. And when I say good going, I mean atrocious going. What a shambles. Dave Rubin is a fucking idiot. Not even in like a good way. Just an idiot. He's the surface level analysis from both of these motherfuckers of one of the great works of modern literature. I've said that before, and I don't think it's an improper. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't think it's an improper. Not expletive. What's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, it's not superlative. Superlative. I know the words. I'm good with the language. Is my flower. Anyway, I don't think it's too big a superlative for the book. It's a superb piece of work. Yeah, the surface level analysis is bad enough, but the fact that they also get most of the shit wrong is fucking enraging. It genuinely pisses me off. Which is why when I got bored I thought I'll go on the internet and shout at Dave Rubin. And I did. And I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't, I mean, I don't really care that much. I do this for me. This is cheaper than going to a therapist, so this is what I do. It's probably not as healthy, but you know, you get what you pay for, I suppose. Yes, so I'm done with that. Go and follow me on the YouTubes, and I might upload this on YouTube. So if you're watching this on YouTube, go and follow me on Twitch. There you go. Cross-pollinated not endorsement. Oh, fuck's sake, I'm tired now. Because I know I'm at the end of the stream and my brain's gone. And usually I rely on Christy to be like, end the fucking stream, Kev. But she's not here because she's asleep. Yeah, it's Christy's fault entirely. Anyway, thank you all for listening and watching. I'll be doing more of these shouting at chuds bits in the future, with literally no regular uploading schedule or anything, but still, whenever, just check the social medias. It'll be on there. Pip pip.